remember 1994 when 21 objects of a fragmented comet plunged into Jupiter? Shewmaker Levi, Levy 9.
I sure do. That was exciting times. I remember it like it was yesterday. I've been a lifelong enthusiast of science since before I can remember, and I was 14 in 1994, and I already had been, reading. I mean, there was no real internet then. I was reading New Scientist magazine. My parents, helped my hobby along, and I was buying, whatever sort of media I could at the time, and was up with current times. I had a little telescope. It was really exciting.
What happened? This thing is out there, picture. It's circling, going into the sun, going back out, going behind Jupiter, and coming back in. It's a big elliptical orbit. Each time it's going out there to Jupiter's...
So that photograph there, 1994, large sort of science agencies, universities, they had the beginnings of digital cameras, but the photography was still massive then. So, and amateur astronomy was massive then. You had to be pretty keen on amateur astronomy with a decent amount of funding and an extra set of skills in terms of photography to be an astrophotographer at the amateur level. But plenty of those were around. You just need a decent rig, telescope to take a photo like that, and you needed we needed a decent camera, skills to do that. But you also needed a type of telescope mount where the one axis points towards the south celestial pole, and the other axis follows the rotation of the Earth, and you have a little motor that keeps up with the rotation of the Earth, so that where you point your camera will stay stationary according to the relative point of view of the camera. Otherwise, you can't take a photo like that, because zoomed in a telescope, the rotation of the Earth will make it appear like the sky is moving at a fast enough pace that you can't get anything more than like a short exposure, which is no good for astrophotography. And telescopes back then, pre-digital, were good enough that you could line up this kind of mount to north and south manually with a compass, and then you could get the exact right angle of elevation of one axis. Can't remember the name of the mount, but I used to know all of this, and point it directly to south, and then that would point to the south celestial pole, which is the point in the sky at which the Earth rotates. And then you go back to your telescope, you have little controls with motors, and get your shot lined up, and then swap out for a camera, open the shutter, and take a photograph. And amateurs were doing it, which as a 14-year-old was amazing. I mean, when professionals do this with multi-million-dollar, top of the range equipment, it's impressive. But when an amateur does it, like just some dude, who could afford a $5,000 telescope and another couple of grand of photography equipment, that's something that as a kid, where you're like, oh hell, I've got a telescope now. At that age, I wanted to have cameras and equipment. My parents went as far as to find a telescope adapter mount that I could stick my SLR Pentax at the time, but I had no way to track the Earth's rotation. But I still was taking photographs back then. I wish I still had them. I took a couple of photographs at whatever magnification with my little high quality fluorite apochromat Celestron telescope. I even remember all the technical stuff and of Orion, and I didn't know how it would come out. My parents developed the film, and to my delight, the bright pink color of ionized hydrogen that you see in magazines and stuff, was right there on my own photograph. You know, it had to be a low exposure. Short exposure, otherwise, you know, it would have streaked across. But yeah, it worked. I took photographs of the moon because that's bright enough. Man, I wish I still had those photographs. But I remember them clearly like it was yesterday. I mean, it's much easier now. If you've got a kid into astronomy now, you can buy a little telescope. You don't even need one of these specialized mounts. You can just have what they call an alt azimuth mount. So basically, you know, rotation up and down, and and then, you know, computers can track the movement of the sky and Earth, and it's not quite perfect because if you take a long enough exposure, it's not going to keep up perfectly with the rotation of the Earth. But this is a subtle, you know, the camera has to rotate as it's tracking the Earth with a special mount set up the proper way. Can't remember the name, but it's good enough for, you know, reasonably long exposures. And then you got digital cameras, and, you know, as a parent now, if your kid's into astronomy, you can buy them a little telescope for a reasonable price with a whole catalog of objects that the telescope can digitally find, and you can take photographs. But I mean, it ain't the same. I mean, back in my day, I was into this enough that I could do what I could do within my limited means, and my parents, you know, were being good parents and encouraging my hobby enough to, you know, buy me a telescope, a high quality one, which I believe cost $900, which is, back in 1984, $900 is a lot of money. It still is. It's a lot of money to spend on a hobby for a 14-year-old, unless you're a rich parent and, you know, whatever. But I was appreciative, and my telescope wasn't close to good enough to do real astrophotography, but I still managed to, you know, get a couple of photographs. I was proud of that. And if that hobby had persisted into adulthood and I had better equipment, I could take amazing photographs. Now in the modern day, you can take much better photographs, but the achievement of that, with the ease of digital cameras and the ease of access to digital images, isn't as profound. Maybe it is for a 14-year-old, you know, who did it themselves. But, you know, if you just go to a computer and dial up the object you want, you're not doing it manually, and, you know, you don't have a manual camera that you need to figure out the exposure and then develop the film. It's kind of not the same, I don't think. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's great for 14-year-olds to be able to practically demonstrate how to do it. So yeah. But anyway, man, I am the fucking king of digression. But I digress. Yeah, this is a huge event. Let's continue with the video.
Gravity is pulling it in closer and closer. They discovered this thing just after it's coming around behind Jupiter and in the early stages of breaking apart. So as it moved...
Yeah, so to elaborate a little bit on why it broke up, well, when it comes to gravity wells and objects coming in, the closer you get to the actual object creating the gravity well, like a planet, especially a big planet like Jupiter that has a strong gravity and a deep gravity well. So, you know, if you come around Jupiter in a orbit, first of all, you're going to accelerate as you get close, because a gravity well is the fourth dimensional space-time equivalent of like going down a hill. And assuming you don't hit Jupiter direct, which is actually harder than you'd think. The reason for that's another digression, so I won't. But yeah, this comet gets captured by Jupiter's gravity well, comes screaming in. It didn't hit it at first, but it came really close. And as it's going around, you'd imagine how you imagine it's breaking up, going around is not probably how it really is. I don't know how you're picturing it, but you can picture in your head, oh, okay, this thing's coming in fast, screaming around in an orbit. Seems obvious it's going to break up, but the actual mechanism is tidal forces. So one half of the comet, the half closest to Jupiter, is actually experiencing more gravity than the other half. And a comet's very small, but the gravity well is so steep that differential is pulling the comet apart, literally. It's called tidal forces. And depending on how deep your gravity well is and how extreme this is, these tidal forces can grow to insane levels. If you come screaming in towards a very dense small object like a black hole or a neutron star, well, if you come in to that gravity well and don't hit the object, which again is hard, just take my word for it, then you're going to just miss. You're going to go screaming around in some kind of orbit or, arc of an orbit. And those tidal forces at the closest approach will rip apart almost anything. And the closer you get, deeper in that gravity well, those tidal forces will dominate. In fact, if you know about this already, you would have heard of the term spaghettification, which says, if you did go into a black hole proper, before you cross that event horizon point of no return, you will be pulled apart so aggressively that you will turn into a stream, like a thin spaghetti-like strand of matter, like like pink goo, whatever, everything that makes you up, you, organic, fleshy blood and stuff. If you could imagine squeezing that under high pressure through a little tiny hole, which is kind of gross, graphic. That's what spaghettification is. Tidal forces can get that strong. So yeah, the comet came into Jupiter from the outer solar system, came really close to hitting it, but skimmed around and it broke apart, and we spotted it. It was an amateur. This is why I started talking about amateur astronomy and photography. Is there were two amateur astronomers who spotted it around the same time, and very high level amateur astronomers like this, they're punching well above their weight, and they are doing astronomy. Most comets are named after famous amateur astronomers. In this case, it was Shewmaker Levi, 2 words, 9. So I don't know what the 9 is about. Maybe it was the 9th comet that was found that year. I don't know. But Shewmaker and Levi are 2 well-known amateur astronomer names that found it around the same time. So they shared credit. Scientists love the fame and credit, and love being awesome enough to spot something first, like everybody, and especially if they're an amateur. You got professional astronomers trawling the skies with the best equipment in the world, which in 1984 was still bloody good. It's gotten a lot better. If you're just out there in your backyard with a good but still small amateur scope and you spot a comet first, well, shit, that's bragging rights. So yeah, this was comet Shewmaker Levi 9, spotted coming out from behind Jupiter after coming really close, broken up, and now it was like a string of pearls with comet tails. Nothing like this had ever been seen. And very quickly, the orbit was calculated because of the awesomeness of Newtonian dynamics, orbital mechanics, and mathematics, where after a few observations, you can calculate where it came from with a good accuracy and where it's going to be. And immediately they were like, holy shit. It didn't hit Jupiter on the way in. It broke up. It's now a string of smaller comets, those famous photographs. But we know that it's going to come around. And I don't know if it orbited once again or it just was coming around for another orbit and this time was going to hit it. We knew. As soon as it was spotted, they're like, whoa, what's this? And Shewmaker Levi, the Tomination, like, hey, we spotted it kind of together. We'll share the credit. We're awesome. And they're like, yeah, you're awesome. So then the professionals went, well, shit, let's swing our top of the range, multi-hundred million, billion-dollar instruments to have a closer look, which they did. And almost immediately, they're like, we know it's going to hit Jupiter. So everyone got really excited. Like, when I say excited, people already following this picked it up early, but this was huge. It was front page news. So everybody was excited. It now became a once in a lifetime eclipse level kind of thing. Go out and see this. And all you needed was a little telescope. So fuck, I can't tell you how excited I was.
Around the sun, all of this stuff gets strung out, like they called it the string of pearls, in space, comes back around, and after 3 months of observations, they projected it forward to where it was going to cross Jupiter's orbit again, and then realized that where it was going to cross Jupiter's orbit, Jupiter was going to be right in that spot. And so they were able to predict that in the...
Just what I said. I haven't seen this yet.
Second week of July, 1994, these 21 pieces were going to fall into...
Also, the second week of July was almost exactly when my birthday was. So this was not only like, oh, I'm 14 and I've got a little telescope and I'm going to watch a once-in-a-lifetime event. A comet's going to hit Jupiter. This is just before my voice broke, obviously. Not only all of that, but it was going to happen real close to my birthday, middle of winter. All I was praying on was it wouldn't be fucking cloudy, and it wasn't. I saw it.
Jupiter. Do you remember 1994 when 21 objects...
Shit, sorry. Anyway, yeah, so that was, 1994. Now, from the Earth's point of view, it was going to hit Jupiter just out of direct line of sight. And Jupiter's spinning quickly, actually. One day of Jupiter is 9 hours, a lot quicker than Earth. So the comet was going to predicted to hit just on behind the limb of the planet, just out of view. But the places where it was striking were going to come into view, onto the sunlit side, quite quickly. And the point at which the comet hit, well, it wasn't one comet, of course. Now it's a string of 9 big chunks, I believe. Was it 9? Maybe that's why that's probably why it's called Shewmaker Levi 9. I don't know. A bunch of them. They were going to hit one after another. Boof, boof, boof. In the same place on Jupiter. But of course, Jupiter's spinning. So now you have, you have a bunch of impact places spread out on the same latitude. And honestly, this had never been done. Never happened before. So we didn't really know whether we'd see anything, because we didn't even know what was underneath Jupiter's cloud layer. We still don't. So we still don't really know what's under Jupiter's cloud layer. And even more than that is, these comet fragments are a couple of kilometers and Jupiter's colossal. So, and we know it's like pretty much clouds and gas all the way down to, liquid gas. there is no surface. So a lot of people are like, well, Jupiter's just going to swallow these little chunks of comet up without even a burp. That was one prediction. But everyone was hoping for something, and boy, was there something. Let me look up, while I'm still rambling, some photographs. Shewmaker. Here we go. Let's get some. Yep, here we go. So there you go. So let's have a look. Here we go. So there's one that's like the impact point with a stain kind of look. Here's a bunch of these stains. So a deep, kind of dark browny sort of burgundy color. And I mean, for scale, just for scale, the Great Red Spot here, that's like a couple of Earths diameters in size. So this little spot here, that puppy is not small. That puppy is probably 15,000 kilometers in diameter. So yeah, these are huge stains created by little 10 kilometer size impactors, comets. And I mean, if you're thinking, well, the comet that took out the dinosaurs was about 10 kilometers, you're right. And to give you some idea of how much energy would be released and damage done by a 10 kilometer comet hitting Earth, like total destruction. Of course, Earth has a hard surface and a thin atmosphere. Jupiter doesn't, so these comets came screaming in way faster than they would to Earth because the gravity well is much deeper. Jupiter's bigger. So these come in and accelerate and hit, I think, at like 50,000 kilometers an hour. I'm not sure. Something in that ballpark. Super fast. And the faster they come in and hit that atmosphere, the more energy they have, kinetic energy. And comets are sort of icy, a lot of volatiles. They just come in, hit that atmosphere, heat up with friction. All that kinetic energy turns into thermal energy from friction with the atmosphere. So, whoosh, and that thermal energy just obliterates the comet, creates a massive thermonuclear sort of scale detonation. And of course, we still don't really know exactly what happened below. You know, you can simulate it, but the comet went below the cloud layer, detonated, and created a plume of this red stuff coming up above the clouds, and that's what we're seeing here. I mean, absolutely, just I will never forget it. You know, it was the same level of excitement as this total solar eclipse, which I haven't seen yet. Before I die, that's on my bucket list. I don't care how long I have to save up for it. If next time one comes along, I'm gonna really try to not miss it, because it'd be a shame for me to be such a astronomy enthusiast as a kid and have seen this and never see a total solar eclipse. Since this event, there have been little comets hit Jupiter that a couple of times that I don't believe were big enough to have been tracked or noticed, but we know it happened because some very, very small versions of these little characteristic burgundy colored stains have appeared since this event. A couple of times, little ones. And we're like, oh, we know what that is because we've seen it before. Just an absolutely wonderful event, and the perfect sort of excuse for me to share a part of my past and my knowledge bank in this kind of autistic detail, you know, in a personal way. You know, I didn't research everything I'm telling you. I didn't look it up before making this video. This is just coming out of my memory banks of what I know when it's relevant. Thanks for listening.